Hey guys, let's talk. So this video is going to be a little bit less scripted. It's actually completely unscripted. I mean, all my stuff is unscripted, but this is going to be much more off the cuff. Um, Something that I've been thinking about lately a lot, and I think is a good video to do kind of early on, is what if I'm wrong? Which you might gather from the title of this video. Um, this is something that I think should serve as the foundation for all of our thinking. Um, when you're having discourse with someone, when you're disagreeing with someone, and even if you're agreeing with someone, I think that you should always have in the back of your head the possibility that you could be wrong. And it's not that novel. You, of course, need to start with a presumption that you are correct, at least enough to begin to move forward, because, as I alluded to in my last video, it's not like I question everything before every single step forward in my life. You have to, you still have to move forward. You can't operate otherwise, thinking that you're wrong about everything. So, why would you do this, and what does that look like in practice? So, the reason for this, and everything is worth delving into here, right? That's the point of this channel. It's the point of these discussions, is to take something that you might already kind of agree with, but to understand why you might think that or do that, like really put it through its paces. Why is it important? I've been having a lot of discussions with people lately about some new things that I'm thinking about and doing, working on, and I'm continually trying to be better on my side about having really, really productive conversations, um, bringing people to my point of view, and of course, trying to get to the truth. If I am on the side of the truth, then I wanna bring others to that side with me. But if I'm not, how would I know that I'm not? And that's what this all comes down to. How do you know if you're wrong? Because if you are wrong about something, you really shouldn't be bringing other people to your side. If anything, you should let them convince you out, right? You should let them, uh, break you of that disillusion. So, how do you know if you are indeed wrong? And it doesn't even have to be so, dramatic like that. It could be something that you just have a little bit of incorrect information on, right? You're a little bit off. Your heart's in the right place, but you're putting too much emphasis on something. I'm sorry, I'm being very vague. Um, but you could totally believe in something and think that you have the right reasons and then still be wrong. And to me, if that's happening, if you're in that situation where you are mistaken about something and you don't know it, that's really bad. I mean, I don't want to be in that situation. I don't think any logical thinking person can say, no, if I'm wrong, I'm going to keep on going anyway. No, I think that they would want to be corrected. It's just that we don't think that we are wrong. I don't, I mean, like, when I think over my stances on things, I don't look at any of those topics, those positions, and think, oh, but I'm wrong on that one. Oh, that one I'm wrong on, but anyway, gonna keep on going. You think that you're right on everything that you believe, and maybe that's like a very crucial part of human psychology, is that you have to, this model of the world that you've built that includes you in it, it needs to be consistent, and it's maybe a little like unharmonious to kind of hold the belief that you're wrong about something and then maintain that. You kind of have to just rationalize everything. So I recognize this as a problem that has to be addressed, or something that you need to keep in mind. Just like any other, fallacy, you have to be aware of it so that you don't make it yourself. Not just so that you don't get caught with your pants down, but so that your thinking is as sound as possible, right? So I think that that should really cover why it's important that you challenge yourself, that you accept that you could be wrong about something, because if you purport to really care about the truth, then you have to realize that we are human beings in the world, imperfect, and you can be wrong about things. So you need to have a mechanism for identifying when you are wrong about something. I need to. We all need to. And so I think a lot about that, maybe in a lazy sort of like, oh, I know that that's a problem, but what am I doing to really solve that problem? I recognize it as an issue, but I haven't solved it. So I guess the other part of this discussion is, or monologue, and there's no one else here, it's just me and myself. But the other half of this is, what do you do with that information? Like, how do you put that into the practice? So there's a couple of things that I inevitably wrote some stuff down. So, and I'm realizing, actually, just as a funny aside, um, so much of my time is spent like typing, that my handwriting already was bad, but it's gotten a lot worse. I think I've forgotten how to draw some characters. Like, where do I start this character? From the top, the bottom? I don't think I ever knew. Don't ask me to write in cursive. Um, some things that have come across, right? And I think the first place to start is the mindset, right? Um, Getting comfortable with the process of being proven wrong. When you when you're having a discussion with someone, and let's say they do, like, by say an outside observer's perspective, an unbiased, logical minded observer sees that you've been proven wrong, you should have it in yourself. You should be prepared and receptive to those emotions of being shown another way, right? You should be comfortable with that situation, instead of having defenses ready where you say, well, you clearly don't know what you're talking about, right? Or like, I don't need to think about this, or this, that, the other thing. A million ways that I have seen people respond to being challenged on something. You should be ready to adopt that it's not a look, it's not a position, that emotion, I guess, of being proven wrong, because you can do it gracefully. And I think, when I have seen someone change their mind on a position, I don't think, haha, gotcha, or wow, what a coward, they changed their mind, or man, they must be weak minded, to just like flop like that. When someone is able to say, you've changed my mind, that is like one of the most beautiful things in the human experience to me. That gives me pause. I think that we should all recognize that as, something to aspire to be able to be that comfortable with yourself, and comfortable with your own self image. I guess it's the same thing. How you appear to others, though, that you can say that you've been proven wrong, and your character doesn't vanish. You don't, crumble to dust when you admit that you were wrong. If anything, it makes you look that much more resilient, that you can adapt and grow, and that you're not just thinking about how you look to others, that you're willing to be vulnerable in that kind of way. I think that that's really powerful, and we should admire that in people, and we should strive for it in ourselves. Um, it's a And it kind of touches on the next thing, which is maintaining a certain level of humility, and this is more so in the way that you have dialogue with people. Something that I've been trying to practice more and more as I get older is not going in with a snarky sort of like, I think I'm right, or even just saying things matter of factly, um, and not even leaving the appearance that there could be something wrong, right? And what I mean by that is like the my language has shifted more towards saying things like I think or this is my understanding of it, especially when it's something that I believe, I think, and I think that I know, but also where maybe I don't have all the data, right? This is my stance on it, this is my position, and I have good reason to believe it, but it is what I think. And it also, it's honest, right? Because you don't, you shouldn't be describing something as a fact or as knowledge if you honestly recognize that you might not have all the data. You might not have a complete understanding of it, and someone in the room might be able to tell you more about it than you know. I think it's honest and noble, honorable to phrase it in the way that you think this thing. Um, and it doesn't mean that it has really any less power. You're still positing what this viewpoint is and what you understand about the topic. You can still have that conversation. I don't think that you lose anything there. If anything, again, like the last point, I think more so you gain because people know that this is coming from your heart rather than like this artificial concrete position like your freaking encyclopedia. Um, the other thing that you can do um, in conversations, this is the last thing on like how you have discourse with people, is to ask more questions. Um, if I'm having a disagreement with someone, I will explain my understanding and my arguments for something, but I will also ask for their stance. I think I'll also do that when I have an incomplete set of knowledge on it, right? And that's maybe most things, right? Where there's plenty of, say it's like a political topic, right? You've only seen a small sliver of what is going on in the world, right? And especially with today where things are filtered through like algorithms that are already keeping you in an echo chamber usually. You don't have all the information. And so rather than saying, well, in short, this is what I've seen, and so this is the case, I like to stick to questions about why somebody thinks what they do. Like, we can talk about the facts. We might have to do a little bit of research. I might have to grant you things that you have seen and I can't confirm in this moment. But what I can do is ask you questions about what you believe. And I guess maybe I want to focus more on what your arguments are, what your train of thinking is. Like, are you being logical? Are you being rational? And focus more on that because that's something that we can just have like on a one-to-one basis rather than citing sources and maybe someone stocks up more stuff on their side, but all of that still needs to be validated. But if I could be wrong about any of the stuff that's on my side, I owe it to the other person, I owe it to myself and the truth to ask questions and actually want to hear the answer. Um, that's the hard part because forcing what you want, you kind of can't do it. You just want what you want, but you should recognize the goal of learning what it is that they know, and if they believe it for good reasons, then that should mean something to you if it's for good reasons, which is I guess why I ask the questions is I'm trying to see what is it that you believe that led you to believe what you believe, and if it's compelling, if it's truly compelling, then I would hope that it would compel me. And if it's not compelling, we could talk about that. So ask questions. I should reiterate that I'm making this video because I want to share how I approach things, and I would hope that other people would take things away from it and apply it themselves. And this this here that I'm talking about with asking questions and the way that you hold conversations, I certainly would hope that other people would apply this in their own, discussions. And I think what I see a lot is a lack of imagination. I think I see people unable to wear the hat of the person on the other side and try to walk through their thinking as well, or maybe run through it, jog, whatever pace you can go. Some people have bad knees. I speak from experience, but I would hope that people would try to empathize with their interlocutor and see where they're coming from, because even if maybe you don't change your mind, you might at least have more of an understanding, a sympathy for their viewpoint. Maybe that makes a big difference in other ways besides just like people changing their mind or getting to the truth. Because at the very least, from like a baseline, we should all have compassion and empathy for each other. We should all at least be willing to listen to each other. Now, that can be really difficult when the other person has radically different views than you, and you might actually feel like there's like a moral difference between your stances. Like you might think that they actually have dangerous views. And so saying to like, well, walk in their shoes, put on the hat of the other worldview. That's probably really hard to do. But if you have any hope of reaching them, you need to start by standing next to them and walking with them out of the haze. If you just tell them to their face, if you just say at them why they're wrong, that's I can't see that doing anything to change their mind. But if you at least walk through their arguments and understand why they think what they do, it doesn't mean that you're going to fall off your own horse. You will understand their thinking at least more closely, right? And if you can repeat their position, their argument back to them in a way that they would agree with, first off, that's really powerful. I think that they would appreciate that because then they feel heard. They're like, okay, at least you are listening to me. Because if you're going to argue against me, you should be arguing against what I believe, not some straw man. So you should at least understand their position, be able to explain it back to them in your own words, maybe not even theirs, right? That's one indication of understanding, is to rephrase something in your own words, not just parrot it back. Show them that you understand their viewpoint, and then you find the thing in their thinking which you can maybe put a question mark on. Just like maybe one factor that you go, well, I understand that you think this thing, but doesn't this break down here? Like, look at this part of it. Isn't this a contradiction? And the hope would be that, well, if you're right, if you happen to be right about this stance and you've pointed out this contradiction, the hope is that they would go, I didn't think about that before. Let me think about that, right? At a bare minimum, like not dramatic, just like let me think about that, because that is a good point and I don't have an immediate answer. What's probably more likely is they'll have some sort of a defense. They might be prepared to be like, they might deflect, or they might say, oh no, well that's because of this other thing that you're not thinking about, and you might have to keep on shifting the goalpost, which would be unfortunate. But the hope, the goal, the aim is to stand with them with their argument, that they agree you see it, and maybe in their mind they're hoping that you're just about to change your mind. And if they're right, hopefully putting yourself in their shoes would be enough to change your own mind, right? I mean, if we're being honest, that is part of this whole discussion, is being able to wear the viewpoint of the other person, and if that is a better viewpoint, you should at least be able to recognize it, right? Now, yeah, maybe that could be a tool in order to reach them, but it's also, it's having compassion and empathy and understanding, but also if you happen to be wrong and don't know it, that would be one way for you to at least entertain how strong their argument it is, You need to evaluate it. It really is tricky because if you're wrong, how strong is that pressure to ignore things that would challenge what you believe? One thing that I see as an issue in my own thinking, or maybe it's maybe more of a habit of mine, is that I think I probably write off certain people because I just see them as, maybe less educated, not less educated, because education, well, that matters. Like what like it's basically your how well read you are on maybe the subject or similar subjects, right? So that can have an impact. Like if someone really does have a background in the thing that you're talking about, that means something, right? They probably have an understanding, a more robust understanding that you don't have. But I think that I more so see people that I think are less intelligent, and I maybe don't give them enough credit, or I don't see that as someone who can change my mind. And that's shitty, first off. It's not like I revel in that. It's more so that I can't help but feel like, what can I get? Like, if I'm not seeing rational, logical, rigorous thinking on their part, and maybe it's not so much an intelligence thing. It's more so, how hard have they thought about this thing? That's maybe even better. Is that I do a lot of consideration on what it is that I come to believe. I want to challenge myself on those things, and I don't know that other people have done the same thing. When I do have conversations with people who I recognize as very intelligent, and this is not like more intelligent than me or as intelligent as me or just under me, just in it by itself, like they're intelligent and I can recognize that. When I speak with those people, I feel like there's things that I can learn, and I try to like put on my thinking cap and like, okay, let's get, let's roll up our sleeves and get into it, and like let's talk about something. But when I'm speaking with someone that I feel like they've thought less about something, I feel like I'm more so an educator in that position, and if they think differently than me, that's just an area where I need to change their mind. And maybe that's a fallacy in itself, right? I don't know what the name of it would be, but it's definitely not good. I kind of feel like that's a limitation on myself, and um, it's not nice to put it. I don't know how else to put it. It's kind of a shitty thing to way to think. But I do recognize times where even if I disagree with someone, whether it's by a little or a lot, if I can tell that their heart is in the right place and that they're really trying to get at the truth, I do recognize that. I will still argue my side, but maybe what it comes down to is my mind not be changed in that moment. Their mind might not be changed in that moment, but that has an immeasurable effect on our thinking after the fact, right? All of these conversations have some incremental, change to your thinking in the long term. My memory is notoriously bad. I try to make up for that. I mean, rather than thinking in terms of distinct memories, I more so just remember emotional connections, right? Like, how did I feel at this time in my life? Or when I think about this person, how do I feel? Like, I'm not going to think about every single interaction or every single event, at that time in my life, but I have a general feeling. And that's something that I think is understood in, uh, human psychology, and like the workings of the brain is like your memory is kind of like boiled down less and less, but like the thing that kind of sticks is like the memory, the feeling of the event. um so my memory is really bad, but what I do try to lean on is like just thinking soundly in the moment. I try to like make up for my lack of factoids with just being very careful in my argumentation. And that's what this is all about here, is like me trying to, it's almost like for myself is like refining how I go about this search and this discussion. But you should recognize you should recognize gaps in your understanding, gaps in your knowledge, and at the very least see that as a place to continue to scratch at. um, I was recently, my mind was changed on ranked choice voting. It was something that I was very passionate about, and anytime um, politics would come up, I would try to find this common ground where it's like, look, people have all different sorts of viewpoints on the political spectrum, but something that we should all really get behind is having our voices heard. And when I learned about ranked choice voting, that was like really eye opening to me, because for most of my adult life, I kind of just had no interest in politics because I felt like your voice didn't matter and the system didn't work to represent people. I felt, what's the point of voting? What's the point of choosing a party? Like, they couldn't possibly encapsulate all of your views. And that kind of just stuck out to me as weird, but I didn't really think that much more about it. But with what I know now, I realized that I was onto something. Many people were onto something who bucked back against that thing. Um, it's it's not the perfect system, and we're right to think that it could be done better and we could be represented better. And so, learning about an alternative vote, I was like, of course, having something like ranked choice voting would be great. And so for years after, I kind of had that in my pocket as something that I would bring up when I'm talking about like just how do we shape a better country, like in general, not just like, oh, these points on my side I think are better. No, no, no. What's something that everyone can agree would let us have better discussions? And ranked choice voting was one of those things. But I recently learned more about the drawbacks, the real problems with ranked choice voting, and the alternatives that did a better job. And so I very quickly was like, well, ranked choice voting, get rid of it, forget about that. So I'll give myself a pat on the back for changing my mind about something that I was passionate about. I feel completely differently about ranked choice voting. There is now this little bit of like embarrassment on my part where I'm like, man, I can't believe I so thoroughly was in favor of it. Now, part of it was because like my original, you know, feelings about ranked choice voting came from a CGP Grey video, and I love that man. His channel's great. Um, I think he makes very smart content. Um, he was the one that made brought this to my attention, and makes me kind of wonder what other things could be wrong, right? Of course, that's always going to be a thing. Anytime you are disillusioned about something, you think, well, what else is wrong? You have to be careful not to go too far down that. People can make mistakes. It doesn't mean that they are only making mistakes. But it did shine a light on something. I was like, man, I was totally, I drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak. Like I was totally in favor of ranked choice voting, and I didn't even realize these problems that it had. And I'll be a little embarrassed about it, but I'll also take it as a lesson learned where if you are going to be that passionate about something, you need to be um, better educated on it, and you need to work hard to prove it wrong. You know, you have to be a little scientist and think, well, if it's right, I should try to prove it wrong, and if I can't, well, that helps its validity. So there are other voting methods that do better than ranked choice voting. The number one that stands out to me is star voting, um, which aims to meet those same goals of like letting you be expressive, but in a more transparent way. I think that's part of what made ranked choice voting, um, what let it slip by, is that it's a little bit opaque how it gets calculated. There's so many different ways depending on how many candidates there are and what the level of uh, relative support is for those candidates. The elections can go in unexpected ways, even if you kind of know like generally who would vote for who. Ranked choice voting, there's no way to know what the results would be until you just put it through its calculations. Whereas with star voting, it's all addition, and there's only two steps. No matter how many candidates there are, there's only two steps. So I say all that to mean that I didn't recognize the issues with ranked choice voting, like that opacity there. Opacity? I don't know. I didn't get it right when it was in Photoshop. I didn't push enough on that part. I didn't do my due diligence. And that that must be applying in other areas of my life. I'm sure there's other things where I'm not working hard enough to prove myself wrong. And so this is maybe not a wake up call. I'm awake, I'm here. I haven't had my coffee, but I'm doing okay. I think you would agree. But it's just another lesson along the way, to a reminder to say you have to believe what you believe. Kind of can't do anything about that. But you should recognize that you can be wrong, and you should be taking deliberate steps to, I'll say, validate those beliefs when appropriate. You know, especially if it's something that you recognize that there's a gap in your understanding. You should be able to recognize when there are those gaps, and you should do something about it. And if somebody that you trust is having a discussion with you and you know their heart is in the right place, that should mean something. Um, and I will try to live that as well. I will try to recognize when the person I'm speaking to means well, knows things, and could be right. And it's our job together to figure out what is the truth. Maybe we're both wrong. Maybe we have to team up and figure out what is the truth out there. So I hope I haven't hemmed and hawed too long. I really appreciate you sitting to listen to this thought process and my journey in this area of just argumentation and seeking the truth. We could all be better, myself included, and so let's help each other be better and also have compassion, because I think we're more alike than we are different. Let's focus on that part, and let's get to the truth, no matter what it is, no matter who's wrong, who's right. Yeah, let's just be better. So, thanks for listening.